In this episode, we meet the Gorn in the arena.
Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Episode 18, Arena, Stardate 3045.6. A landing party from the Enterprise beams down to Cestus III for dinner engagement with Commodore Traverse. Upon arrival, they discover that the Earth observation outpost has been obliterated. Furthermore, the outpost has been destroyed several days ago, so the messages received from the base must have been faked. The landing party discovers a survivor, but then comes under attack by the aliens responsible for the massacre. O'Hara is literally vaporized. The Enterprise simultaneously comes under attack by an alien vessel and is forced to raise its shield, preventing the landing party from beaming back up. Kirk is able to locate the arsenal on the outpost and locate a mortar. The aliens overload Spock's tricorder, causing it to explode, but Kirk is able to use the mortar to fire a blue sphere, which destroys the alien attackers. After returning to the ship and giving chase to the alien ship, the survivor reports that they were attacked by a ship which approached at space normal speed, then proceeded to bombard the outpost. The Enterprise increases its speed to warp 8 in order to catch the alien. You rarely hear of the spaceship Enterprise in the original series going warp 8. Before they can do so, both the Enterprise and the alien ship are scanned and incapacitated. The responsible party is the advanced civilization calling itself the Metrons and inhabiting an uncharted solar system. The Metrons force Kirk and the reptilian commander of the alien Gorn ship to duel to the death to determine which ship will survive. Both combatants are provided with auto-translation walkie-talkies, but Kirk thinks the device is only a recorder, so it gives away his location and his intention to the Gorn. However, although the Gorn is physically stronger than Kirk, it is much slower. Kirk rolls a boulder down a cliff and flattens the Gorn, only to see it push the rock aside and get up unscathed. Kirk then becomes ensnared in a set of ropes laid by the Gorn, but is able to escape, albeit with an injured leg. After Spock's entreaties to the Metrons, the crew of the Enterprise is permitted to watch the spectacle on the video monitor. Kirk is eventually able to outwit the Gorn by finding materials for making gunpowder, which consist of sulfur, carbon, potassium nitrate, i.e. saltpeter, and using it to propel the native diamonds which are found on the planet at the Gorn using a hollowed-out bamboo reed as a gun barrel. After winning the victory, Kirk convinces the Metrons not to destroy the Gorn ship, since it is possible that they view the Federation base as an encroachment on their territory. Kirk is returned to the Enterprise, which is mysteriously transported back to its original position on the way to Cestus III. If you're a Trekkie at all, you will recognize this fun fact that Bobby Clark, the stuntman who played the Gorn, is one of the literally top fan faves at Star Trek conventions. I've heard an interview with him, and it's just amazing to hear this 80-year-old man talk about the cheers and yells he gets as the Gorn. While there's much to compliment this episode on, the use of Vasquez rocks, the military aspects and command aspects, it's an incredibly violent episode. And you have the situation of really close order killing. The episode, I think, really stands the test of time and may be more relevant today than it is or was when it was released in 1966. We are carrying on war and have done for some time via drones, exemplifying the whole disconnectedness we see in this episode. But putting boots on the ground and people at risk, I think, is really demonstrated in this show. That's something that really led to the forever wars that the United States was in up until the evacuation of Afghanistan. It's something that sticks with you, and in this case, the close order killing of or mortal wounding of the Gorn, I think, really drives that message home. Interestingly enough, to show how close order it was, even in the production, William Shatner developed tinnitus from being so close to the explosion where he sets off the diamonds to hit the Gorn. So personal risk for the actors as well. But a great episode. Vasquez Rocks provides a great backdrop. We'll see them again. We saw them in Shore Leave. And the kind of angle of the rocks really adds to the overall story of this. And, of course, we have the Gorn. They continue to be part of the Star Trek oeuvre and storyline, even in 2022, in the latest iteration of Star Trek. They are featured prominently in one show. So lots to digest from this. Lots of leadership lessons that we're going to explore in our next segment. I know you will enjoy rewatching Arena. Next up, compliance takeaway. So what are some of the compliance takeaways from this case or this episode? I think there's some interesting lessons here that you might not at first blush really pick up on, or at least think about. So first up, we talk about getting out of the corporate office and going to visit the troops, but how about doing that and listening? I think here Kirk really listens, and he comes to understand that perhaps there was a different interpretation of the attack on the Earth outpost as opposed to simply an attack by a alien race. This ability to listen is actually what not only saves Kirk, but I think saves both Kirk and the Gorn ship as well, because he persuades the Metrons of the abilities of both parties to not only change but adapt and consider new facts and new situations. So listening, but it all starts with listening. If you study any leadership strategies, they always start with listening. So it's not simply getting out of the office and talking, but listening is probably even more important. Next up, once again, not so much what is a risk. I think we have talked about this at some length. Nevertheless, what is the risk matrix and how can a risk grow into a high risk? So what appeared to be obviously a pleasant dinner really degenerated quickly, and how can something change literally on a dime? So in the dead of space, perhaps things can move more quickly, but actually things move quickly in business as well. So what happens when you have a salesman or sales team or sales initiative that causes sales to spike so much an entire country goes up several notches in a reason? What's the underlying calculus for that, and have you looked at that from the compliance perspective? So how can a risk become a high risk? And what do you have in terms of oversight as a compliance officer to monitor those risks going forward? And then finally, even with facts on the ground that you think you understand, additional due diligence may be required. And I think this is really the seminal message from this episode, that Kirk came to understand that even though it appeared to be an unprovoked attack by the Gorn on the Earth outposts, additional inquiry may determine that there was a different reason for the attack. And that different reason for the attack may not forgive the Gorn, but certainly could go a long way towards explaining their behavior going forward. And the Metrons certainly were persuaded by this, but it was really the additional questions asked by Kirk and Kirk himself coming up with the answers. So what is your due diligence? How much due diligence have you done? And do you need to do additional due diligence even if there are facts on the ground? There's no rule or regulation which says once you have completed due diligence, you should not do additional due diligence. Of course, there are many companies that do ongoing monitoring, but even with facts on the ground, what are they right now for you? Join us tomorrow where we take up Tomorrow is Yesterday. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.